Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? When you look at the approach to this year's draft, I think the consensus is they got to go tackle, got to go offensive line at 14. Are you in that category?
I very much am. I just don't see the way they attack free agency, or I guess you could call a lack of attack in free agency, with a more moderate, tempered approach. I don't see how you could avoid it, considering the hole you have at not one, but possibly two tackle positions, because you just don't know what's going to happen with Ramczyk, and you don't know who's going to actually settle in at left tackle. And, you know, this is a year, fortunately for them, slight silver lining. It's a decent spot for them to land a very good tackle in the first round of the draft. But unlike in years past, I think this year, I don't think they have much of a choice. I think they've got to go tackle to address their biggest vulnerability.
You think they move up?
Possibly. They always have at some point in the draft. I don't know if it's going to happen in the first round. I think it could happen possibly on day 3, to be honest with you. But it's always possible for them to move up with either a future pick, or, I mean, they got the 45th overall pick. I don't know how far up they would have to go if they want to use the second round pick. I'm not sure. I'd be a huge fan of that, but nonetheless, I think it's certainly possible if they want to go up a few spots, throw in a 5th round or a pick next year to go up and get a guy that may be slipping and falling that could, you know, potentially be one of their guys that doesn't just they don't just draft, but potentially be a guy that starts from day one, because I think that also has to factor in as well.
You know, Sean, it's so interesting. Last year before the draft, we all kind of knew there was like this consensus, like they were going to draft a running back somewhere. Like, we all knew what a need that was. People talked about Kendre Miller. There was a lot of talk about, help me, the running back from Tulane. I'm blanking on his name.
Tajay Spears.
Spears, thank you. It was at Tennessee now. We talked so much about that as like a 1A, 1B need. Do you see a position like that this year for New Orleans where you're like, man, I would be fall over stunned if they didn't take someone at that position, outside of offensive tackle, which we all think they'll probably do at 14?
I think if you were to ask, people would say edge pass rusher, but the more I look at the depth at the pass rushing position, the more, yes, of course you could add at that position, but I'm not sure it's the glaring need with the investment in Chase Young, and I know there's the health scare, but you've invested so much in that position. I think they got 6 or 7 guys at edge pass rusher. If there were the next need for me, it would be defensive tackle, to be honest with you, because they lost Malcolm Roach. I think it's probably an underrated loss. They're not very deep at that position. It's not an easy position to find. You mentioned last year's draft. I mean, that was the position they targeted, defensive tackle, but I still think you can add some depth there. Other than that, you know, you can look at the wide receiver position. You can look at maybe the tight end position, but I would think offensive tackle just jumps off the top of the page, obviously. And if I were going, it would probably be defensive tackle with the investment of Chase Young at defensive end, and plus the track record of, frankly, swinging and missing at that position.
So Saunders, Shepard, Brazee, and you're thinking, okay, who's someone else that could be in that rotation on the interior?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that would be it, absolutely. Because, I mean, you rotate those guys a lot. B, look, I like Brazee. I think he's got a high ceiling, and I think he can get there, but he's not there yet. I think Saunders is a decent player, and Shepard is a guy who's a veteran. He's over 30 years old. But, I mean, you need some young talent up at that position. So I think that's a spot you can come in and draft a guy that can work themselves into the rotation.
You know, like, you've covered this team and the organization so long. A lot of times when you're that close, like, sometimes you know what they're thinking even if they don't say it. So I'm curious, do you think is there maybe this component, Sean, where like Dennis Allen knows he's a good defensive coordinator and they're going to be fine defensively, but they got to make the offensive thing work with Derek Carr because of the investment they made and everything there. So maybe they lean heavily. That's why I keep looking at them going wide receiver, tight end. I mean, they got to get Derek Carr weapons. So like I look at 45 and I go, in a deep wide receiver draft, they're going to be somebody that's really good on the board at 45. Maybe that's the direction they go. Do you think that's part of the thought process with Allen and Loomis this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a thought that defensively, DA is a good enough defensive mind that the defense is going to be fine. and they've still got enough players, enough playmakers to where, and a strategist that head coach / defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, where they're going to be fine. But this whole thing hinges on getting the most out of Derek Carr to get back into the postseason, but obviously a new offensive coordinator. And I think, you mentioned wide receiver, but I also feel like we've been waiting forever for an athletic tight end to emerge. I mean, think about how many times we've been thinking and talking about, oh, this could be the next tight end, this could be the next tight end. It just has never materialized really since Jimmy Graham the first go around, if you want to be honest, in terms of playmakers at that position. But I thought DA kind of showed his hand a little bit at either the combine or the NFL owners meetings, where he said, he clarified pass catcher. So that could either be a pass catching tight end or a wide receiver. Clearly, they want to add another sort of athletic person in the passing game to help Derek Carr, who's always flourished when he's had sort of playmaking tight end.
Kobe Fleener, Jared Cook, Ben Watson, Adam Troutman. We can go down the list, man. They have been searching. You're right. I mean, they've never found the guy. We thought Juwan Johnson might be the guy. If that guy's on the board, it wouldn't surprise me. A couple more for you here. Sean Fazand's with us, Fox 8, on Twitter at Sean Fazand, Fox 8. You'll give him a follow. Do you have any sense as to whether or not they might add anybody else via free agency before the draft?
Well, they added a linebacker today, a reserve linebacker. It's going to play some special teams with Khalid Hudson, was in Washington for 4 seasons. Yeah, it could be sort of that minor one-year deal, depth type player. I am a little surprised they haven't gone out and signed, just even if it's a 32-year-old tackle, just someone, just because of the optics of how big that hole looks at 2 spots when you talk about the tackle position. And it was so, frankly, upfront with the Ryan Ramczyk situation and how they're discouraged about where he's at from a health perspective, that I'm surprised that they haven't at least gone out and brought back Andrus Peat or signed a veteran, just for the sake of, we need somebody there that could just, if for nothing else, compete at that spot. Certainly possible that could still happen. And it's certainly possible after the draft. There's always that late May, June wave where guys that you don't necessarily think are there, but they're there, and you might bring a guy in at that time. So yeah, I don't think they're done with signing players outside of the draft, but the big names, I think, obviously, are with other teams.
Yeah, they've usually been pretty active later in free agency. Just cap situations don't always allow them to be super active at the beginning. Save a guy like Derek Carr or something like that. What if you had a perfect scenario for this draft, would it involve drafting a quarterback?
Me personally, no. Okay. Unless it was one of the top guys that really had slipped and fell in the first round at 14. I'm not crazy in love with the idea of another mid-round, maybe this guy can develop into something thing. I think they kind of took that route last year with Jake Haener. But if you like the guy with a first-round grade at 14, and he was one of the top 3, if we had a crazy slide with the top 4 quarterbacks that are certainly the ones we're talking about, and all of a sudden that player was available at 14, that could potentially, you think the guy's got franchise material and could potentially, reset the franchise, and possibly, or, if you had a first-round grade on a guy and at 45, maybe he's within reach to go up a couple spots and get maybe. But only if, in my opinion, only if you think that guy can be a starter at some point. But I don't necessarily think it's the gotta have scenario that last year. I knew they were going to invest in a young player because it was something that they had wanted to do. But this year, I know they're high on Jake Haener. So if it's another, hey, we might develop this guy into a backup, I don't know if they go that route this year.
He's on Twitter at Sean Fazand, Fox 8. Make sure you follow him there. Good stuff, man. Always great to chat. Thanks for a couple of minutes.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.